By the time the FBI realized how much money the Mafia truly controlled, it was already too late. The cash was gone. Not burned, not buried, but laundered through Swiss accounts, Vatican ledgers, and European banks that never asked questions. The Mafia didn't just build a criminal empire. It built a financial system, one that mirrored the legitimate economy so perfectly that, for decades, the two were indistinguishable. Welcome to The Financial Historian, where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is ever as simple as it looks. Our story begins in Sicily, a small island at the center of the Mediterranean, a place long ruled by outsiders. Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Normans, Spaniards, each left behind rulers, but never institutions. When Italy unified in the 19th century, Sicily was still poor, fragmented, and lawless. The new Italian state was distant and corrupt. Justice was something you could buy, not something you could expect. And in that vacuum, a new form of power emerged. Not a government, but a network. A brotherhood that offered what the state could not: protection, enforcement, and silence. The first mafiosi weren't gangsters, they were middlemen. They enforced contracts for citrus growers, protected shipments, collected debts. They made sure business flowed in a land where courts and police didn't. But they also charged a price, a tax called pizzo. If you refused to pay, your oranges rotted in the fields, your workers vanished, your family disappeared. Over time, protection became extortion, and the mafia evolved from a service into a system. By the late 1800s, every corner of Sicilian commerce paid tribute to someone, from the docks of Palermo to the hills of Corleone. The mafia didn't just steal, it managed. It mediated disputes, controlled elections, and took a cut of everything that moved. It became a parallel economy, invisible but absolute. And like any good business, it diversified. Cattle, citrus, land, smuggling, money was reinvested, never idle. Violence was the branding. Corruption was the business model. Then came Benito Mussolini. In the 1920s, the fascist dictator vowed to crush the mafia once and for all. He sent his iron-fisted police prefect, Cesare Mori, to Sicily with orders to restore the authority of the state. Thousands were arrested, many fled. For a time, it worked. The mafia went underground. But it never died. It waited. 2 decades later, war brought opportunity. When Allied forces invaded Sicily in 1943, they needed local allies who understood the terrain, the ports, the loyalties, and they found them in the mafia. American military intelligence, desperate for cooperation, reached out to figures like Lucky Luciano, the New York mob boss with Sicilian roots. In exchange for his help securing the docks of New York and smoothing the invasion of Sicily, Luciano's sentence was quietly commuted. The mafia was back, legitimized by war. After the liberation, Sicily was flooded with reconstruction money, contracts for roads, housing, infrastructure. Billions flowed from Rome and Washington to rebuild southern Italy. The mafia inserted itself everywhere. Politicians needed votes, contractors needed security, banks needed intermediaries. The old rural gangs transformed into businessmen in tailored suits. They built companies, won public tenders, and laundered funds through real estate. The mafia had evolved, from gunmen to financiers. By the 1950s, Palermo was booming. Cranes filled the skyline and concrete poured day and night. Locals called it Il Sacco di Palermo, the sack of Palermo, because the mafia was quite literally looting the city through urban development. The profits were astronomical. And while the world celebrated Italy's economic miracle, a shadow miracle unfolded beneath it. The creation of a private capital network that reached far beyond Sicily. The heroin trade made the mafia global. Sicily became the key node in a transatlantic supply chain. Morphine base from Turkey was refined in Sicilian labs, shipped through Marseille and sold in the United States. By the mid-1960s, the French connection was feeding nearly all of America's heroin demand. The profits, hundreds of millions of dollars, needed somewhere to go. Cash was bulky, incriminating, and useless unless it could be cleaned. That's when the mafia mastered a new art: financial invisibility. They began investing in Swiss and Luxembourg banks, funneling heroin profits through offshore companies and anonymous trusts. They bought hotels in Palermo, vineyards in Tuscany, and shell firms in Panama. They realized that the true power of money wasn't in spending it, it was in hiding it. The 1970s were the high point of this evolution. The mafia had found friends in powerful places, not just politicians, but bankers. And one bank in particular became the heart of the storm: Banco Ambrosiano. It was Italy's largest private bank, with deep ties to the Vatican Bank, formerly known as the Institute for Religious Works. On paper, the Vatican Bank was a charitable institution. In reality, it was a financial black hole, a sovereign entity immune from Italian law, able to move money across borders under the guise of religious missions. At the center of this web was a man named Roberto Calvi, the chairman of Banco Ambrosiano, nicknamed God's Banker. Calvi built a network of offshore companies in Panama, Luxembourg, and the Bahamas to funnel billions in secret funds. Some of it came from political slush money, some came from the mafia, and some, investigators later discovered, came from the Vatican itself. In 1982, it all collapsed. Banco Ambrosiano imploded under $1.3 billion in missing funds. Calvi fled Italy, terrified. Days later, he was found hanged beneath Blackfriars Bridge in London, his pockets stuffed with cash and bricks. The coroner called it suicide. Most believed it was execution. The mafia doesn't file lawsuits. The scandal exposed a truth few wanted to admit. The lines between organized crime, politics, and finance had long since blurred. The Vatican Bank quietly paid restitution, but never admitted guilt. Dozens of officials resigned. But the system, the machinery of shadow finance, survived. After Banco Ambrosiano's fall, the mafia shifted again. Violence in the 1980s brought unprecedented attention. Assassinations of judges, car bombings, bloody wars between rival clans. It was bad for business. So the next generation, the white-collar mafia, traded bullets for balance sheets. They invested in stock markets, real estate, and global trade. The money became cleaner, the methods more sophisticated. By the 1990s, Italy's Anti-Mafia Commission estimated that organized crime generated more than $100 billion a year, roughly 7% of the country's GDP. That made the mafia, collectively, Italy's largest enterprise. But unlike Fiat or INI, it paid no taxes and faced no regulation. It operated entirely in cash, shadow accounts, and offshore holdings. Even when authorities cracked down, the money flowed elsewhere. London became a favorite. So did Switzerland, Luxembourg, and the Caribbean. Each new crackdown simply taught the mafia how to move faster, how to disguise ownership through layers of shell corporations and proxies. By the 2000s, mafia wealth was so deeply embedded in legitimate businesses that economists struggled to calculate where clean Italy ended and criminal Italy began. And it wasn't just the Sicilian Mafia anymore. The 'Ndrangheta from Calabria, the Camorra from Naples, and countless foreign cartels adopted the same methods. They invested in global markets, bought luxury property, and became shareholders in legitimate companies. Dirty money, once local, had gone multinational. Today, law enforcement agencies estimate that up to 2 to 5% of global GDP is laundered annually, more than $2 trillion. Some of it flows through traditional crime. Much of it flows through corruption, tax evasion, and corporate fraud. But the structure, the blueprint, is the same one the Sicilian Mafia built a century ago. Anonymous ownership, untraceable transfers, and silence for sale. The irony is that what was once organized crime now looks a lot like organized finance. The techniques pioneered by mob accountants, layered transactions, offshore entities, bearer shares, are the same tools used today by billionaires, corporations, and governments. The mafia didn't corrupt capitalism, it understood it. Look closely and the parallels are everywhere. The mafia controlled ports. Corporations control supply chains. The mafia extorted through fear. Modern finance does it through debt. The mafia laundered cash through real estate. Global investors inflate housing markets the same way, just legally. The difference is only paperwork. What the Sicilian Mafia really built was no party, just a criminal empire. It was an economic philosophy. Money doesn't care where it comes from, only where it goes. Their story isn't a relic of the past. It's a mirror of the present. When oligarchs hide fortunes in London, when politicians route money through offshore trusts, when corporations shift profits to avoid taxes, they are using the same shadow networks the mafia designed. The names have changed. The system hasn't. Even the Vatican, after decades of scandal, still struggles with transparency. In 2020, new reports revealed that hundreds of millions in church funds were still invested through offshore accounts and luxury real estate. The ghosts of Banco Ambrosiano still echo in the corridors of power. And yet, the mafia itself has become quieter. The bloodshed of the 1980s is mostly gone. The real dons today wear suits, not leather jackets. They sit on boards, not in backrooms. The violence is financial, silent, precise, and invisible. Money laundering has replaced murder as the preferred path to control. The real godfather wasn't the man with a gun. It was the accountant, the one who knew how to make dirty money disappear. The mafia's true innovation wasn't intimidation. It was integration. They learned that the best way to hide criminal capital was to mix it with legitimate capital until they became indistinguishable. And that's exactly what they did. The lesson is uncomfortable, but clear. Systems of power don't need legality to survive, only structure. Only history has the answers. I'll show you where to look.